Duan Meadow, deep in the rain-soaked back roads of Oregon, where the Douglas firs grow so thick they swallow the moonlight whole, a 19-year-old girl made a choice. Kwajai moko chiatan haiko ngunghun. Part mutnieuch, she thought about X, she thought about Y. Lapdoitan, images flooded her mind. X, then Y. Huakjung flashback ngang. Part hai Ken Damon Sukhian Ske could not speak. She just stared at him. Flat him physical reaction, Ske's knees buckled. The room tilted. Part hai Duan Magnus Jaited. Tuanbo exposition dumqua dialogue, Chianyara Senki action, Gat Cheo reaction. Part ba Fientua Sky testimony Chibadoan Guangangcha pivotal moment. Murong Tain Saudin Baidoan, Voi cross examination Chitiet Hun, part ba ending. And she wrote, Lap ba lần giữ một lần cuối, thấy hai lần trước bằng cung khác. Cap story, X said, E said. Mix Voi whispered, murmured, replied, continued added part mo din ba. Looked at, Suthian bon mui balan. Taebang gazed at, stared at, glanced at, watched, studied, observed. De sut suakutamet, opening can punch Nyan Hun before. Deep in the rain-soaked back roads of Oregon, where the Douglas firs grow so thick, they swallow the moonlight whole, a 19-year-old girl made a choice that would forever shatter the fragile boundary between witness and warrior. After the Douglas firs swallowed the moonlight whole, on a rain-soaked back road in Oregon, a 19-year-old girl drove her car directly into an execution. In that moment, Sky Brennan shattered the boundary between witness and warrior. 2. Demon reveal can emotional punch before it was Demon Cole, after the man standing in the doorway had been dead for 5 years. But Damon Cole was very much alive. 3. Trial scene contention, Hien Taikwa rushed, Ken theme. Prosecutors opening a statement painting angels as monsters, hide-in by exchanges, cross-examination, voice sky jury reactions throughout moment of doubt, trick verdict, bone, ending can stronger callback. Thêm đoạn cuối cùng gọi lại scene đầu tiên. Sky nhìn lại highway 100 một nơi mọi chuyện bắt đầu. Viet lại Tuanbo, phiên bản quy bục tam. Deep in the rain-soaked back roads of Oregon, where ancient Douglas firs grow thick enough to swallow moonlight whole, destiny arrived in the form of a battered Honda Civic. August 15, 2019. The night was heavy with moisture and the particular kind of darkness that exists only in places humans have forgotten. Highway 101 stretched empty and black, a ribbon of cracked asphalt cutting through wilderness. Sky Brennan was 19 years old and $347 short of making rent. She had been awake for 16 hours delivering pizzas and Amazon packages across sprawling rural roads south of Portland. Her car smelled like cardboard grease and that distinctive scent of desperation that clings to people working 3 jobs while still losing ground. The radio had stopped working 2 months ago. She drove in silence, except for the protesting whine of the engine and the rhythmic thump of worn windshield wipers fighting endless Oregon drizzle. Everything about Sky Brennan was lean and sharp. Built like a long-distance runner, all sinew and angles with blonde hair yanked back in a perpetually messy ponytail. Her hands bore calluses from hauling boxes. Her eyes carried the permanent exhaustion of someone who had been tired since childhood. $412 sat in her checking account. Rent was $759. Her little sister Riley remained locked in a state-run rehab facility for teenagers, a place Sky visited every Sunday armed with contraband candy bars and fierce promises that things would get better. They never did. She was driving north at 11:43 p.m. when she spotted the roadblock. Not a police checkpoint. 3 pickup trucks parked sideways across both lanes, headlights creating a wall of blinding white light in the middle of nowhere. Sky slowed instinctively, her foot hovering over the brake pedal. Something about the scene felt fundamentally wrong. The trucks were too deliberate. The emptiness of the road too absolute. No flashing lights, no orange cones, just raw intimidation. Every survival instinct screamed at her to turn around. She did not. Sky pulled onto the shoulder and cut her engine, letting the Civic coast to a stop about 50 yards from the barricade. She killed her headlights. In the sudden darkness, her eyes adjusted slowly to the rain-blurred scene ahead. The downpour drummed against the roof. Through the wet windshield, she could make out shapes moving between the trucks. 4 men, maybe 5. Big men in dark clothes. One of them was dragging something heavy across the asphalt. Not something. Someone. Sky's breath caught. The man being dragged was enormous, easily over 6 feet tall, with shoulders that belonged on a linebacker. His hands were bound behind his back with chains thick industrial links that gleamed dully in the headlights. Blood poured from a gash above his left eye. His face was so swollen it barely looked human. He wore jeans, heavy boots, and a leather vest. Even from this distance, even through the rain, Sky could see the patch on his back. A winged skull, red and white colors. Hell's Angels. The men dragging him wore no patches. They had tactical gear, black cargo pants, heavy jackets. One carried a gas can, another held a length of chain. They were setting up for something final. Sky knew with absolute certainty that if she stayed in her car and did nothing, the big man in the leather vest would be dead in the next 5 minutes. She should have driven away. Instead, Sky Brennan did the single most reckless, idiotic, beautiful thing she had ever done in her 19 years of hard living. She started her car. She flipped her headlights to high beam. She pressed her palm flat against the horn. And she drove directly at the roadblock at 50 miles per hour. Boom. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The men scattered like roaches hit by kitchen light, diving for the ditches, shouting curses lost in the roar of Sky's engine and the blaring horn. She did not slow down. She aimed the Civic directly at the gap between two trucks. At the last possible second, she cranked the wheel hard right. The car fishtailed wildly, rear end swinging out in a spray of gravel and rainwater, but she kept her foot on the gas. The biker had rolled himself into the ditch when chaos started. Sky saw him lying there half submerged in muddy water chains still wrapped around his torso. She slammed the brakes. The Civic skidded to a stop 10 feet past him. She threw open the passenger door. "Get in!" The man stared at her with one good eye, the other swollen shut. Blood ran down his face in rivulets mixing with rain. He did not move. Behind them, the men were recovering, shouting, running back toward the road. Sky leaned across the passenger seat, screaming now, her voice cracking with adrenaline and terror. "Get in the car or die here. I do not care, but decide now." That broke the spell. The big man heaved himself up out of the ditch with a roar of pain chains rattling. He staggered toward the open door and collapsed half into the passenger seat, legs still hanging out. Sky did not wait for him to get all the way in. She punched the accelerator. The door slammed shut from momentum, and the Civic lurched forward, tires screaming. In the rearview mirror, she saw muzzle flashes. Two of the men were shooting at her. She heard the sharp crack of bullets hitting metal somewhere behind the rear window, but the glass held. She kept driving. She did not slow down until the roadblock was 3 miles behind them, and the only sound was rain and the ragged breathing of the man bleeding all over her passenger seat. Sky pulled off onto a dirt logging road and killed the engine. Her hands shook so violently she could barely hold the steering wheel. The man next to her was making a wet, gurgling sound that might have been breathing or might have been drowning. She turned on the dome light. In the sickly yellow glow, he looked even worse. His left hand was a mangled ruin, 3 fingers bent at impossible angles. His ribs were visible through torn skin. The chains were still wrapped around his chest, padlocked tight. "You are going to die if I do not get you to a hospital." Her voice sounded distant and strange, like it belonged to someone else. The man coughed. Blood sprayed from his lips. When he spoke, his voice was a low, grinding rasp, like stones dragging across concrete. "No hospital." Sky stared at him. "You will die." The man turned his head slowly to face her with his one functioning eye. It was gray, cold, absolutely certain. "If you take me to a hospital, they will find me. They will kill you. They will kill everyone in that emergency room." No hospital. Sky's mind raced. She had $612. She had a first aid kit in the trunk left over from when she used to take care of her mother before the cancer won. She had a 1-bedroom apartment in a building so run down, the landlord never asked questions. She had exactly 0 good reasons to bring a dying Hell's Angel home with her. She put the car in gear and drove toward Portland. The apartment was a 4th-floor walk-up in a complex that smelled like mildew and cigarette smoke. Sky half carried, half dragged the big man up the stairs. He was conscious, but barely, his weight pressing down on her shoulders like a collapsing building. Twice he stumbled, and she thought they would both go tumbling backward down the concrete steps, but somehow they made it. She got the door open and hauled him inside. He collapsed on her couch, really just a futon with a torn cover. Blood immediately began soaking into the fabric. Sky did not care. She ran to the bathroom, grabbed every towel she owned, and came back. She knelt beside him. I need to cut these chains off. She found a hacksaw in the maintenance closet down the hall, a rusted old thing that looked like it had been there since the building was constructed in the 70s. It took her 40 minutes to cut through a single link. The man did not make a sound the entire time, even though she knew every vibration of the saw had to be agony against his broken ribs. When the chain finally snapped and fell away, he let out a long, shuddering breath. Thank you. Sky did not respond. She was already cutting away his vest and shirt. The damage underneath was catastrophic. 3 ribs clearly broken, a deep puncture wound in his side still bleeding freely, his left hand useless. She had no training, no anesthetic, no idea what she was doing. But her mother had died slowly over 18 months, and in that time, Sky had learned how to clean wounds, how to stitch skin, how to recognize infection. She spent the next 4 hours working on him. She used fishing line from a tackle box in the closet to close the puncture wound. She wrapped his ribs as tightly as she dared using an old elastic bandage. She could not do anything about the hand except immobilize it and hope. When she was finally done, the sun was beginning to rise outside and Sky was covered in blood. The man on her couch was still breathing. That was all she could say for certain. She collapsed on the floor beside him and fell asleep sitting up. When she woke, it was late afternoon. The man was awake, staring at the ceiling, his gray eyes unfocused. What is your name? Demon. Damon Cole. They call me Reaper. Who were those men? Iron Syndicate, rival club. They were paid to kill me. Why? Demon turned his head slowly. Because someone inside my own club sold me out. Someone I trusted. Someone I called brother. His voice was flat, empty. The voice of a man who had already died inside. Sky got up and made coffee. She did not have much food, but she found some canned soup and heated it on the stove. Demon could not sit up, so she fed him with a spoon like he was a child. He ate without tasting. When the bowl was empty, he spoke again. What is your name? Sky Brennan. Why did you stop? She did not answer right away. Images flooded her mind. Her mother's final days. Riley locked away in a facility where they did not allow phone calls. The $347 she was short and the eviction notice that would be taped to her door in 2 weeks if she did not come up with the money. I do not know. I saw you and I could not just drive away. Demon nodded slowly. You should have. For 2 weeks, Demon Cole lived on Sky Brennan's couch. She called in sick to all 3 of her jobs. She spent her last $400 on medical supplies and food. She changed his bandages. She helped him to the bathroom. She listened when he talked and stayed silent when he did not. The puncture wound in his side closed. The ribs began to heal. The fingers on his left hand remained crooked and stiff, but he could move them. On the 10th day, he was able to stand. On the 12th day, he could walk. On the 14th day, he told her the truth. My brother sold me out. Not my blood brother. My club brother. Victor Bones Harrison. He is the sergeant at arms, second highest rank in the Oakland Charter. He wants to be vice president. I am vice president. So he made a deal with the Iron Syndicate. They take me out. He moves up. Everyone wins. Except you. Except me. What will you do? Damon studied her for a long moment. His face was still bruised, but the swelling had gone down. He looked younger than she had thought, maybe 35. There was a tattoo on his neck of a grim reaper holding a scythe. The ink was faded like it had been there a long time. I am going to disappear. If I go back now, Bones will finish the job. But if I stay gone, if everyone thinks I am dead, I can find out who else is dirty. I can fix this from the outside. You are going to fake your death. Yes, Sky nodded slowly. Okay. Demon reached into his vest, which Sky had cleaned and mended as best she could. He pulled out a small leather pouch. Inside was a medallion made of heavy silver about the size of a poker chip. It was engraved with the image of a reaper, a skeletal figure in a hooded cloak holding a scythe. Around the edge were the words, "One life, one debt." Demon held it out to her. If you ever need help, if you are ever in trouble, break this. Smash it. Throw it in a fire. It does not matter how. When it breaks, it sends a signal. Someone will come. Maybe me. Maybe someone else. But someone will come. That is a blood oath. Do you understand? Sky took the medallion. It was cold and heavy in her palm. I understand. Demon stood. He was still moving stiffly, but he could walk without help now. He pulled on his vest and zipped it up. At the door, he paused and turned back. You saved my life, Sky Brennan. I will not forget that. Then he was gone. Sky stood in her empty apartment holding the silver medallion. Outside, the sun was setting. She had $53 left in her bank account. She had missed 2 weeks of work. She was going to be evicted. Riley was still in rehab. Nothing had changed, except now she had a promise from a ghost. 1 week later, the news broke. A warehouse in Nevada had exploded. The building had been used by the Hells Angels to store weapons and motorcycle parts. The explosion was massive. The fire burned for 18 hours. They found 3 bodies in the rubble, all burned beyond recognition. Dental records confirmed one of them was Diamond Reaper, co-vice president of the Oakland charter. The funeral was held in Oakland. Sky watched the news coverage from her apartment, which she had managed to keep by selling her car and switching to a bicycle for deliveries. On the screen, she saw hundreds of motorcycles rolling through the streets of Oakland in a funeral procession. She saw men in leather vests with tears streaming down their weathered faces. She saw a closed casket draped in the Hells Angels colors. She gazed down at the medallion sitting on her coffee table. She picked it up and wrapped it carefully in a clean cloth. She placed it in a small wooden box her mother had given her years ago. She put the box under her bed, and she did not think about Demon Cole for 5 years. 5 years is enough time for a life to calcify into routine. For Sky Brennan, those 5 years were a slow, grinding erosion of hope, punctuated by brief moments of desperate joy. At 19, she had been exhausted. At 24, she was something beyond exhausted. She was hollowed out, a shell going through motions. Riley had gotten out of rehab at 18. She stayed clean for 6 months before relapsing. Then she got clean again. Then she relapsed again. It was a cycle Sky knew too well. But on Riley's 3rd attempt at sobriety, something changed. Riley met a counselor at the county clinic who actually gave a damn. She started going to meetings. She got a sponsor. She stayed clean. And then 3 months ago, Riley collapsed during her shift at the grocery store where she worked as a cashier. The diagnosis was congenital heart disease, a defect she had been born with, but which had gone undetected until it was nearly too late. The walls of her heart were thin. The valves were failing. She needed a transplant. The surgery would cost $180,000. Insurance denied the claim. Pre-existing condition, they said, even though Riley had never known the condition existed. Sky worked 3 jobs again. She drove for Amazon Flex during the day, delivering packages to houses that cost more than she would make in a lifetime. She worked nights at a 24-hour diner, slinging eggs and coffee to truckers and drunks. On weekends, she did mystery shopping gigs that paid $12 an hour. She slept 4 hours a night. She lived on gas station coffee and protein bars. In 3 months, she had saved $8,000. She needed $172,000 more. Riley was living with her now in a new apartment, slightly less depressing than the last one. Riley slept in the bedroom. Sky slept on the couch. Riley's medications cost $300 a month. She was on a waiting list for a donor heart, but the waiting list was 2 years long. Her doctors said she had maybe 6 months. On a Thursday night in late September, Sky was finishing her Amazon Flex route. It was 11:30 p.m. and she had 1 delivery left. The address was in an industrial area on the outskirts of Portland, a neighborhood of warehouses and abandoned factories. The GPS took her down a series of increasingly dark streets until she was driving through an area that looked like the set of a post-apocalyptic film. The delivery address was a warehouse with no lights and no signs. Sky checked the app. The customer had requested the package be left at a side door marked with a red X. She found the door. It was metal and covered in rust. Someone had spray painted a crude red X on it. Sky grabbed the package from the back of her van and walked to the door. She set the package down, took a photo to confirm delivery, and turned to leave. That was when the lights hit her. Four sets of headlights flared to life simultaneously from different directions, pinning her against the metal door or like a bug on a board. Sky threw up her arm to shield her eyes, but she could not see anything beyond the blinding white glare. She heard car doors opening, footsteps on gravel, multiple people moving toward her. A voice cut through the darkness. Male, calm, with a faint accent she could not place. Sky Brennan, we have been looking for you for a very long time. Four men stepped into the circle of light. They were all wearing black tactical gear. Two of them carried handguns held low but ready. The man who had spoken was in his early 50s, with silver hair slicked back and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He was not holding a weapon. He did not need to. Who are you? Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. The man smiled. It did not reach his eyes. My name is Vincent Romano. You may have heard of my family. Sky had. The Romano crime family ran half the heroin trade on the West Coast. They were East Coast transplants, Italian mafia, who had moved into Oregon and Washington 15 years ago and waged a bloody war to establish territory. They were not people you wanted to meet in a dark warehouse. What do you want? Vincent Romano took a step closer. He moved like a man who had never been afraid of anything in his life. 5 years ago, a Hells Angel named Damon Cole stole $2 million worth of cocaine from one of my distribution centers. He thought he was clever. He thought he covered his tracks. But I am a patient man, Miss Brennan. I do not forget debts. And last month, I finally found the missing piece of the puzzle. He pulled out a folded piece of paper from his jacket and held it up. Even from a distance, Sky could see it was a photo, a surveillance photo, grainy and dark. It showed a small Honda Civic pulled over on the side of a highway. The driver's side door was open. A young woman was helping a large injured man into the passenger seat. The woman was Sky. You saved his life, which means you are complicit in his theft, which means you owe me $2 million. Sky's legs felt like they were going to give out. She leaned back against the metal door. I do not have $2 million, I know, but you are going to help me get it back anyway. He gestured to one of his men who stepped forward and handed Sky a thick manila envelope. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside were photos. Photos of Riley, walking to work, sitting in a doctor's waiting room, asleep in her bed. The last photo was from that morning. Riley standing at the bus stop 3 blocks from their apartment, wearing the blue jacket Sky had bought her for her birthday. Your sister is very sick. I understand she needs a heart transplant. Expensive procedure. $180,000, I believe. How do you know that? I know everything about you, Sky Brennan. I know you work 3 jobs. I know you have $8,000 in savings. I know you sold your car 5 years ago, and now you drive that van. I know your mother died of cancer when you were 17, and your father was never in the picture. I know you have been tired every single day since you were a child. Sky said nothing. She stared at the photo of Riley at the bus stop. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to work for me. I need someone to transport merchandise across state lines. Someone clean, no criminal record, no connections to my organization. A young woman driving a delivery van does not attract attention. You will make 10 runs. After the 10th run, your debt is paid. I will even cover your sister's surgery as a bonus. And if I say no, Vincent's smile vanished. Then Riley will not make it to the transplant list. Accidents happen, Miss Brennan. People with weak hearts sometimes just stop breathing. It would be a tragedy. Sky felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. It was not fear. Fear was something she had burned through years ago. This was clarity, the absolute understanding that she had no choice, that she had never had a choice. When do I start? Tomorrow night, my people will contact you with the details. Do not try to run. Do not go to the police. I have people everywhere. If you deviate from my instructions in any way, Riley dies. Do you understand? Yes. Good. Vincent turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Miss Brennan, if you are thinking about reaching out to your biker friends for help, I would advise against it. Demon Cole is dead. The Hells Angels are fractured and weak. No one is coming to save you. You are alone. He walked back to his car. The headlights cut off one by one. The vehicles pulled away, leaving Sky standing alone in the darkness, holding a manila envelope full of photos of her dying sister. She got back in her van. She drove home on autopilot. Riley was asleep when she arrived. Sky stood in the doorway of the bedroom, watching her sister breathe. Riley looked so small under the blankets, so fragile. Sky went to her own room, really just a corner of the living room, sectioned off by a curtain. She pulled the wooden box out from under the couch. She opened it and took out the silver medallion. She held it up to the light. One life, one debt. Damon Cole was dead. Vincent Romano had made that very clear. But Damon had also made a promise. He said if she broke the medallion, someone would come. Maybe not him, but someone. Sky walked into the kitchen. She set the medallion on the counter. She opened the drawer and took out a hammer. She stood there for a long moment, studying the engraved reaper. Then she raised the hammer and brought it down with all her strength. The medallion shattered. Two pieces skittered across the counter and fell to the floor. Sky picked them up. They felt lighter now. Broken. Nothing happened. Of course nothing happened. Demon was dead. The promise was dead. Sky was alone, just like Vincent said. She wrapped the broken pieces in a paper towel and threw them in the trash. Then she sat down at the kitchen table and cried for the first time in 5 years. She cried for her mother. She cried for Riley. She cried for the 19-year-old girl who had been stupid enough to stop her car on a dark highway and save a stranger's life. When she was done crying, she made coffee. She had a delivery to make tomorrow night. Cocaine, probably. Maybe heroin. It did not matter. She would do what Vincent Romano told her to do because the alternative was watching Riley die. Sky Brennan had made her choice 5 years ago when she drove into a roadblock and saved a dying man. Now she was going to pay for it. 72 hours passed. Sky made her first delivery for Vincent Romano. It was exactly as he had described. She picked up a package from a storage unit in Portland, drove it to a warehouse in Eugene, and dropped it off. No one spoke to her. No one asked questions. The package was heavy and wrapped in plastic. She did not open it. She drove back to Portland and went to work at the diner. Riley asked her if she was okay. Sky said she was fine. She was getting good at lying. On the 4th night after she broke the medallion, Sky came home at 3 in the morning after her shift at the diner. She parked her van in the lot behind the apartment building and walked toward the entrance. She was so tired she was seeing double. Her feet hurt. Her back hurt. Everything hurt. She did not notice the motorcycles until she was 10 feet from the door. They were parked in a perfect line along the curb. 30 of them. Maybe more. Massive chrome machines that gleamed under the streetlights. Harley Davidsons. Every single one. And standing beside them were the riders. Men in leather vests. Tall, broad, tattooed. They were not moving. They were just standing there in absolute silence watching her. The patches on their vests were identical. Red and white rockers. A winged skull in the center. Hell's Angels. Sky stopped walking. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might explode out of her chest. One of the riders stepped forward. He was older than the others, maybe 60, with long gray hair, pulled back in a ponytail and a beard that reached his chest. His face was weathered and scarred. His eyes were the pale blue of Arctic ice. On his vest, above the death's head patch, was a rocker that read, President. Below it, a smaller patch, National. He walked towards Sky slowly, deliberately. When he was 3 feet away, he stopped. He reached into his vest and pulled out 2 pieces of broken silver. He held them up so she could see them clearly in the streetlight. The pieces of the medallion. You broke it. His voice was deep and rough like gravel in a mixer. Demon told me if this medallion ever broke, I was to come. Personally, no matter where I was, no matter what I was doing. He said the girl who saved his life might need saving herself one day. Sky could not speak. She could barely breathe. The man stepped closer. My name is Magnus Stone. I'm the president of the Portland Charter. Damon Cole was my brother, not by blood, but by choice. 5 years ago, he told me a story about a girl who drove her car into an execution and pulled him out of hell. He said if that girl ever called, I was to bring the full weight of this club down on anyone who threatened her. Magnus glanced past Sky toward the apartment building. Is your sister inside? Yes. The word came out as a whisper. Is she safe? For now. Magnus nodded slowly. He turned and made a gesture to the men standing by the motorcycles. They did not move, but something shifted in the air. The tension ratcheted up like a wire pulled taut. Tell me who is threatening you. Sky told him everything. She told him about the warehouse, about Vincent Romano, about the $2 million, about the photos of Riley, about the deliveries she was being forced to make. Magnus listened without interrupting. His expression did not change. When she was finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. Vincent Romano is a dead man. He just does not know it yet. You cannot kill him. Sky's words came fast. He has people everywhere. If something happens to him, they will come after Riley. He said so. Magnus studied her face with something that might have been respect. We are not going to kill him. Not yet. First, we are going to dismantle his entire operation piece by piece. We are going to take his money, his product, his soldiers. And when he has nothing left, when he is broken and desperate and afraid, then we are going to give him a choice. Disappear or die. How can you do that? Because we are the Hell's Angels. We have been doing this for 70 years. We own the roads, Miss Brennan. We own the ports. We own half the trucking companies in the Western United States. If Vincent Romano wants to move product, he needs to do it on our territory. And we just decided he is no longer welcome. Magnus gestured toward the apartment building. Pack a bag. You and Riley are coming with us. Right now, you will stay in a safe house until this is finished. Riley will get her surgery. You will get your life back. That is the deal. What do you want in return? There was always a price. Always. Magnus smiled for the first time. It was not a cruel smile. It was tired and short and strangely kind. You already paid the debt 5 years ago. This is just us returning the favor. He turned and walked back toward the motorcycles. Sky stood there in the parking lot staring at 30 Hell's Angels who had appeared out of the darkness like avenging ghosts. Fragments of memory flashed through her mind, the broken medallion in her trash can, Demon Cole bleeding on her couch, the promise he had made. Someone will come. Someone had come. Sky went inside and woke Riley. Her sister was groggy and confused. Sky told her to pack a bag and not ask questions. For once, Riley listened. 20 minutes later, they were standing outside with 2 duffel bags and a backpack. Magnus was waiting by the lead motorcycle. He had brought a van, an unmarked black vehicle with tinted windows. You will ride in the van. 2 of my men will drive you. The rest of us will escort you. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. The drive took 2 hours. They headed east out of Portland into the mountains. The convoy of motorcycles surrounded the van on all sides. To anyone watching, it would have looked like a military operation. Sky and Riley sat in the back of the van in silence. Riley kept glancing at her sister with wide, frightened eyes, but she did not speak. They arrived at a compound deep in the woods. It was not what Sky had expected. She had pictured a rundown clubhouse full of drugs and weapons. Instead, she found a sprawling property with a main lodge that looked like it belonged to a hunting club. There were several smaller cabins scattered among the trees. The whole place was surrounded by a tall fence and security cameras. Magnus led them into one of the cabins. It had 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a living room with a fireplace. The furniture was old but clean. You will stay here. There are guards posted around the property. No one gets in or out without my permission. Do not try to leave. Do not try to contact anyone. For the next few weeks, you do not exist. Understood. What about my jobs? You do not have jobs anymore. As of tonight, you are dead. Both of you. We will handle Vincent Romano. You will stay here and you will rest, and when this is over, you will get to start over. He left them alone in the cabin. Riley immediately turned to Sky. What the hell is going on? Who are those people? Why did you wake me up in the middle of the night? Why are we in the woods with a biker gang? Sky sat down on the couch. She was so tired she could barely think straight. Do you remember 5 years ago? When I sold my car? Riley nodded. I sold it because I needed money for rent. But the real reason I needed money was because I missed 2 weeks of work. I missed 2 weeks because I was taking care of someone. A man who was dying. I saved his life, Riley. And he gave me something. A promise. He said if I ever needed help, all I had to do was ask. Riley sat down next to her. And you asked. Yes. Riley surveyed the cabin. She peered out the window at the motorcycles parked in the clearing. She turned back to Sky. Are we in danger? Sky considered Vincent Romano. She considered the photos of Riley at the bus stop. She considered the medallion broken in two pieces. We were in danger, but not anymore. Riley nodded slowly. She did not ask any more questions. She went to one of the bedrooms and closed the door. Sky heard the sound of the bed creaking as her sister lay down. She stayed on the couch watching the fire in the fireplace. She did not know what was going to happen next. She did not know if Magnus could actually stop Vincent Romano. She did not know if this was real or if she was about to wake up in her van outside the warehouse with a gun pointed at her head. But for the first time in 5 years, Sky Brennan felt something she had almost forgotten. She felt hope. The first week at the compound passed in a strange haze of unreality. Sky and Riley were not prisoners exactly, but they were not free either. They could move around the property, but they could not leave. There were always men watching, not overtly, not threateningly, but they were there in the shadows by the tree line near the gate. Riley adjusted faster than Sky expected. Maybe it was because she had spent most of her teenage years in institutions where freedom was an illusion anyway. She spent her days reading books from the lodge's surprisingly extensive library and walking the trails that crisscrossed the property. Her health seemed to stabilize. The medication she needed appeared without explanation. So did the portable heart monitor she wore strapped to her chest. Someone was taking care of the logistics. Sky did not ask who. Magnus came by the cabin every few days. He never stayed long. He would sit on the porch with Sky and give her updates. Vincent Romano's supply lines were being systematically destroyed. Shipments were disappearing. Warehouses were burning. Soldiers were getting arrested or simply vanishing into the night. Romano was losing money, losing influence, losing control. And he knows it is us. He knows the angels are behind it, but he cannot prove anything. And even if he could, he does not have the manpower to retaliate. He is bleeding out, and there is nothing he can do to stop it. What about Riley? What about the surgery? Already arranged. There is a donor heart in San Francisco. Riley is at the top of the list now. The surgery will happen in 3 weeks. Cost is covered. All of it. Sky stared at him. Why are you doing this? Magnus gazed out at the trees. He was quiet for a long time. When Damon disappeared 5 years ago, he left me a letter. He told me if anything happened to him, I was to find the girl who saved his life and protect her. He said she was worth more than all of us combined because she stopped her car when no one else would have. He said that kind of courage was rare, that it needed to be protected. Demon is dead. The warehouse explosion. Magnus turned to face her. His pale blue eyes were unreadable. Is he? And then he left. 3 weeks became a month. The compound became familiar. Sky learned the names of the guards. She learned the rhythms of the place, the way the men moved in shifts, the way they checked the perimeter every 4 hours, the way deliveries arrived at dawn and dusk. Riley grew stronger. Her color improved. She smiled more. She stopped asking when they could go home because maybe for the first time in her life she felt safe. On a cold October morning, Magnus arrived at the cabin with news. Riley's surgery was scheduled for the following Tuesday. They would leave for San Francisco on Monday. A full security detail would accompany them. The hospital had been informed that Riley was under protective custody related to a federal investigation. No one would ask questions. Thank you. It felt inadequate, insufficient, but she did not have other words. Magnus nodded. Then he said something that made Sky's blood run cold. Vincent Romano knows where you are. Sky stood up from the porch chair so fast it fell over backward. What? One of his men was arrested 2 days ago. He talked. Romano knows about the compound. He knows about Riley's surgery. He is desperate, Sky. He has lost everything. His organization is in ruins. The families back east have cut him off. He has nothing left to lose. So what does that mean? It means he is going to make one last play. He is going to try to take you. Use you as leverage against us. It is a suicide move, but he is going to make it anyway. When? Soon. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. We are ready for him. But I need you to understand something, Sky. This is going to get ugly. People are going to die. And when it is over, you are going to have to make a choice about what kind of life you want to live. What do you mean? Magnus stood up. He pulled something from his vest and handed it to Sky. It was a patch, red and white, a winged skull. Below it a rocker that read, honorary member. Demon wanted you to have this. He had it made before he disappeared. He said you earned it the night you drove into that roadblock. You saved one of ours. That makes you one of ours. Sky examined the patch. The 19-year-old girl who had stopped her car 5 years ago flashed through her mind. That girl had not known what she was doing. She had not understood the consequences. But she had stopped anyway. I am not a biker. No, you are not. But you are family, and family protects family. He left her standing on the porch holding the patch. Sky went inside and showed it to Riley. Her sister studied it for a long time, then met Sky's eyes with an expression that was equal parts fear and pride. Are you going to take it? I do not know. That night the attack came. It happened at 2 in the morning. Sky was awake lying on the couch staring at the ceiling when she heard the first explosion. It was distant but unmistakable. A deep booming sound that rattled the windows. She sat up. Riley appeared in the doorway of her bedroom, her face white. What was that? Sky did not answer. She went to the window and peered out. The compound was lit up like daylight. Floodlights had kicked on automatically. She could see men running toward the fence. She could hear shouting. Another explosion. Closer this time. Orange flames visible through the trees. Someone was attacking the compound. Sky grabbed Riley and pulled her away from the window. Get in the bathroom, Brady. Lock the door. Do not come out no matter what you hear. Riley did not argue. She ran. Sky heard the bathroom door slam and the lock click. She stood in the middle of the living room trying to think. She had no weapon, no training, no idea what to do. The cabin had a back door. She could run, take Riley and disappear into the woods. But the woods were dark and full of men with guns, and she had no idea which direction was safe. The front door exploded inward. 3 men burst into the cabin. They were wearing black tactical gear and ski masks. They had rifles. One of them pointed his weapon at Sky. Do not move. Sky raised her hands. Her mind was racing. These were Romano's men. They were here for her. If she went with them, maybe they would leave Riley alone. Maybe. Where is the sister? Not here. She's in the hospital. The surgery already happened. The man stepped closer. He pressed the barrel of his rifle against Sky's chest. You are a terrible liar. He gestured to the other 2 men. They moved toward the bedrooms. Sky did not think. She just moved. She lunged at the nearest man trying to grab his rifle. She did not know what she was doing. She had never been in a fight in her life. But she was not going to let them take Riley. The man backhanded her across the face. Sky went down hard. Her vision exploded into stars. She tasted blood. The man leaned over her. Stay down. And then the back of his head came apart. The sound of the gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space of the cabin. The man collapsed forward onto Sky, his weight crushing her. She screamed and tried to push him off. The other 2 men spun around, raising their weapons. More gunshots. One of them went down immediately. The third managed to fire a burst, but his shots went wide, hitting the ceiling and sending a shower of plaster raining down. Someone stepped through the shattered front door. Sky could not see clearly. Her vision was blurred with blood and tears. But she saw the silhouette, tall, broad, moving with absolute confidence. The figure raised a handgun and fired twice. The third attacker dropped. Silence. Sky pushed the dead man off her and scrambled backward until her back hit the wall. She peered up at the figure standing in the doorway. The floodlights outside backlit him, turning him into a dark shape. But then he stepped into the cabin, and the interior lights caught his face. Sky stopped breathing. It was not Magnus. It was Demon Cole. He looked different. Older, his hair was longer, pulled back in a rough ponytail. He had a beard now, thick and dark. His left hand was scarred badly, the fingers crooked. But his eyes were the same. Gray, calm, absolutely certain. Hello, Sky. Sky could not speak. She just stared at him. Demon knelt down in front of her. He holstered his gun and reached out to gently touch her face where the attacker had hit her. His fingers were surprisingly gentle. Are you hurt? Sky shook her head. Then she found her voice. You are dead. You died 5 years ago. The warehouse, the fire. They found your body. They found a body, not mine. The bathroom door opened. Riley stepped out. She surveyed the dead men on the floor. She studied Demon. She turned to Sky. Is this the guy? The one you saved? Yes. Riley nodded. Cool. Then she threw up. Damon moved quickly. He got Riley to the couch. He checked her heart monitor. Her pulse was elevated, but not dangerously so. He faced Sky. We need to move. This cabin is not secure anymore. Can she walk? Yes. Damon went to the door and made a gesture. Two more men entered, both wearing Hell's Angels vests. They began dragging the bodies out. Damon came back to Sky. Magnus is securing the perimeter. Romano brought 20 men. Most of them are already down. But we need to get you and Riley to the main lodge. It is reinforced. Safer. Why are you here? Why now? Because you broke the medallion. That was the signal. That was always the signal. When you broke it, a GPS chip inside activated. It sent me your location. I was 3 states away, but I came. I promised I would. You have been alive this whole time. Yes. Why did you fake your death? Because there was a traitor in the club. Someone high up. Someone I trusted. If I stayed dead, I could find out who. I have been working in the shadows for 5 years, following money trails and informants, and watching. And 3 months ago, I found him. Who? Demon's expression hardened. Rusty Malone, Sergeant-at-Arms. He has been feeding information to the FBI for 6 years, using RICO laws to try to dismantle the club from the inside. He is the one who set me up with the Iron Syndicate. He is the one who has been killing our brothers and making it look like accidents. Sky felt dizzy. The world was tilting sideways. Does Magnus know? Yes, I told him 2 weeks ago. We have been setting a trap. Tonight was part of it. We let Romano think he could get to you. We let Rusty think his information was good. And now they are both here. All the traitors in one place. You used me as bait. Demon met her eyes directly. Yes, I am sorry, but it was the only way. Sky wanted to be angry. She wanted to scream at him, but she was too tired. And somewhere deep down she understood. This was the world Demon lived in, a world of chess moves and sacrifices. She had saved his life 5 years ago. He had spent 5 years making sure he could save hers in return. They moved through the compound toward the main lodge. The fighting was over. The floodlights illuminated bodies scattered across the grounds. Romano's men, all dead or dying. Hell's Angels stood over them, weapons lowered. No one was celebrating. They just looked tired. Magnus met them at the door of the lodge. His face was grim. Romano is in custody. We are holding him in the garage. Rusty is there too. We caught him trying to run when the shooting started. Damon nodded. Is everyone accounted for? 2 of ours wounded, no fatalities. Romano lost 18 men. Good. Magnus observed Sky and Riley. Get them inside. Medical is set up in the dining room. A medic checked them over. Riley was shaken but physically fine. Sky had a split lip and a bruise blooming across her cheekbone, but nothing serious. The medic gave her an ice pack and left. Sky sat on a folding chair in the lodge's dining room holding the ice to her face. Riley sat next to her. This is insane. Yes. Are we going to die? No, not tonight. Demon came back an hour later. His hands were clean, but Sky could see blood on his vest. He sat down across from them. Vincent Romano has agreed to leave the state. He will disappear. If he ever comes back to Oregon, or if anything happens to either of you, he knows we will find him. What about Rusty? Demon studied her, then Riley. Rusty is being handled. That was all he said. Sky did not ask for details. She did not want to know. Riley's surgery is still scheduled for Tuesday. You will have a full security team. After the surgery, you can decide what you want to do. Stay here. Go somewhere new. We will support whatever you choose. Why? Why go through all this for me? Demon leaned forward. His elbows rested on his knees. His scarred left hand hung loose. 5 years ago, I was chained to a tree in the rain waiting to die. No one was coming for me. My own brothers had sold me out. I had given up. And then a 19-year-old girl in a beat-up Honda drove into a group of armed men and pulled me out of hell. She did not know me. She did not owe me anything. But she stopped anyway. He paused. That kind of courage is rare, Sky. That kind of goodness is rare. You could have driven past. You could have called the cops and kept going. But you did not. You stopped. You saved my life. And in doing so, you reminded me that there are still people in this world worth protecting. He stood up. So yes, we went through all this for you. We will continue to go through it. Because you are worth it. Because Damon Cole does not forget a debt. And because you are family now, whether you want to be or not. He left them alone in the dining room. Riley faced Sky. Are you going to take the patch? Sky considered the honorary member patch Magnus had given her. 5 years flashed through her mind. The exhaustion, the desperation, the slow grinding erosion of hope. She considered the girl she had been at 19 and the woman she was now at 24. I do not know, but deep down she was starting to. Riley's surgery took place on a Tuesday morning at a private hospital in San Francisco. The operation lasted 9 hours. Sky sat in the waiting room surrounded by Hell's Angels. Magnus was there. Demon was there. A dozen others whose names she was beginning to learn. They did not speak much. They just sat. A silent wall of leather and loyalty. When the surgeon finally emerged and said the words, "The surgery was successful and Riley is stable," Sky cried for the second time in 5 years. Riley spent 3 days in intensive care, then was moved to a recovery room. Sky stayed with her. Magnus arranged for a private room and round-the-clock security. No one questioned it. On the 5th day, Riley was awake and lucid. She gazed at Sky and smiled. I am going to live. Yes, you are going to live. 2 weeks later, they returned to the compound. Riley was still weak, but improving every day. The doctors said her recovery was remarkable. Sky suspected it had something to do with the fact that for the first time in Riley's life, she was not stressed, not afraid, not constantly looking over her shoulder waiting for the next disaster. One evening, Sky found Damon sitting on the porch of the main lodge. He was cleaning a pistol. The motions were automatic, practiced. He glanced up when she approached. Can I sit? Of course. Sky sat down next to him. They were quiet for a while. The sun was setting behind the trees, casting long shadows across the compound. I need to know something. The warehouse explosion. The body they found. Whose body was it? Damon did not stop cleaning the gun. A man who deserved to die. Someone who hurt a lot of people. We gave him a choice. Die slow or die fast and let us use his body. He chose fast. Sky absorbed that. In the old world, the world before she stopped her car on Highway 101, she would have been horrified. But that world felt very far away now. What happened to Rusty? Damon finished reassembling the pistol. He slid it into the holster on his belt. Rusty is gone. He will not bother anyone ever again. Did you kill him? Damon met her gaze. His gray eyes were steady. Do you really want to know the answer to that question? Sky waited. The man who had betrayed Damon, who had sold him to his enemies, who had tried to destroy the club from within. Justice, loyalty, what it meant to live in a world that existed outside the law. No, I do not. Damon nodded. Smart. They sat in silence for a few more minutes. Then Sky asked the question that had been burning in her mind for weeks. Why did you disappear? Really? Why spend 5 years in the shadows? Because I needed to know who I could trust. When Rusty sold me out, it broke something in me. I had trusted him with my life. We had been brothers for 15 years, and he betrayed me for money and a deal with the FBI. I could not come back until I knew who else was dirty. So I stayed dead. I watched. I waited. And I built a network of people who were loyal to the club, not to the money. And now it is over. The traitors are gone. The club is clean. I can stop being a ghost. What will you do? Damon surveyed the compound. At the motorcycles lined up in perfect rows. At the men moving through the property with purpose and discipline. Magnus offered me my old position back. Vice President. But I do not think I want it. I have been alone too long. I do not know if I can go back to being part of the machine. What do you want? He smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile. It made him look younger. I want to ride. I want to fix motorcycles and work with my hands and not have to look over my shoulder every 5 minutes. I want to be bored. I want to be normal. You will never be normal. Demon laughed. It was a rough sound like he was out of practice. No, probably not. Sky reached into her pocket and pulled out the honorary member patch Magnus had given her. She held it in her palm. What does this actually mean? If I take this, what am I agreeing to? It means you are under the protection of the club. It means if anyone threatens you, they answer to us. It means you have brothers who will ride through fire for you. It also means you have responsibilities. You rep our name. You do not bring shame to it. You help when we ask for help. What kind of help? The legal kind, mostly. Maybe we need someone to drive a truck across state lines. Maybe we need someone to rent a storage unit under their name. Nothing criminal, just things that benefit from someone with a clean record. Sky turned the patch over in her hands. The wing skulls stared up at her. I need to think about it. Take your time. It is not going anywhere. But Sky had already made her decision. She just was not ready to say it out loud yet. 3 days later, Riley was cleared to travel. Magnus offered them a choice. They could go back to Portland. He would set them up in a new apartment, make sure they had money and security, or they could stay at the compound for as long as they wanted. There was a cabin they could live in, jobs they could do, a place in the community. Riley wanted to stay. Sky could see it in her sister's eyes. For the first time in her life, Riley felt like she belonged somewhere. She had made friends among the women who lived at the compound. She was learning to cook in the lodge kitchen. She was smiling. What do you want? I want to stay. If that is okay, I want to stay here. Sky surveyed the compound. She observed the cabins nestled in the trees. She observed the main lodge with its huge stone fireplace. She observed the men and women moving through the property, working, laughing, living. The apartment in Portland flashed through her mind. The 3 jobs, the exhaustion, the loneliness, who she had been and who she was becoming. Okay, we will stay. That night, there was a gathering in the main lodge, 50 members of the Portland Charter. Food was cooked, beer was drunk, someone played guitar. It was not a party. It was just people being together, being family. Magnus found Sky sitting on the porch steps. He sat down next to her. Have you made a decision? Sky pulled the honorary member patch from her pocket. She examined it one more time. Then she handed it to Magnus. I want to earn it, not just have it given to me. Give me something to do. Let me prove I belong here. Magnus took the patch. He studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, you want to earn it. You will earn it. What do you need me to do? Magnus stood up. He gestured for her to follow him. They walked across the compound to a large garage. Inside were a dozen motorcycles in various states of repair. Tools hung on the walls. Parts were scattered across workbenches. It was organized chaos. We need a mechanic. Someone who can fix bikes and work with their hands. Someone trustworthy. Demon said you used to help your mother fix cars when you were a kid. Sky nodded. That was a lifetime ago, but she remembered. She remembered the feel of a wrench in her hand, the satisfaction of solving a mechanical problem. I am rusty. We will teach you the rest, if you are willing to learn. Sky surveyed the garage. She examined the bikes. She felt something she had not felt in years. Excitement. Purpose. When do I start? Tomorrow. Magnus left her alone in the garage. Sky walked among the motorcycles. She ran her hand over the chrome. The 19-year-old girl who had stopped her car and saved a stranger's life came to mind. That girl had not known what she was starting. She had not known the path she was stepping onto. But Sky was beginning to understand. She had thought she was saving Demon that night 5 years ago. But maybe he had been saving her too. Maybe they had saved each other. She picked up a wrench from the workbench. It felt good in her hand, solid, real. Tomorrow she would start earning her place. Tomorrow she would begin learning how to be part of something bigger than herself. But tonight she was just Sky Brennan, a girl who had stopped her car when no one else would have. And that was enough. 6 months later, the compound looked different. Or maybe Sky looked different and everything else stayed the same. She could not tell anymore. What she knew was this: her hands were permanently stained with grease. Her arms were lean and strong from lifting engines. Her back no longer ached from exhaustion, but from the good kind of tired that came from honest work. She knew the difference now. Riley had gained 20 pounds. Her cheeks had color. She laughed easily. She worked in the lodge kitchen and had started taking online classes. Community college. She wanted to be a nurse. Sky pondered that sometimes how strange it was that Riley, who had spent so much of her life in hospitals, now wanted to work in one. But maybe that was the point. Riley wanted to help people the way she had been helped. Damon was teaching Sky how to rebuild a transmission when Magnus found them in the garage. It was early March. The winter had been brutal, but spring was starting to show itself in the greening trees and the longer daylight. Magnus looked tired, more tired than usual. "We have a problem." Damon glanced up from the engine block. His hands were black with oil. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that involves the FBI. And a man who should be dead, but apparently is not." Sky felt her stomach drop. She knew who Magnus was talking about before he said the name. Rusty Malone. Magnus nodded. "He is alive. We thought we had handled about it, but apparently he made a deal. Full immunity in exchange for testimony. He has been in witness protection for 4 months. And now he is coming out of hiding. He is going to testify in federal court. Against us. Against the club. They are using RICO. If his testimony stands, they will dismantle every charter west of the Mississippi." "When?" 3 weeks. The trial starts in 3 weeks. Sky set down the wrench she was holding. Her hands were shaking. "I thought you said he was gone." "We thought he was. Turns out he was smarter than we gave him credit for. He disappeared the night of the attack. We found a body burned beyond recognition in his truck. DNA matched. We thought it was him, but the DNA was his brother's. Rusty killed his own brother to fake his death and go into witness protection. What do we do?" Magnus observed him for a long moment. "I do not know. If this was 10 years ago, I would know exactly what to do. But things are different now. The club is trying to go legit. We have businesses, investments, families. We cannot just make a federal witness disappear. It would bring down heat we cannot afford, so we do nothing." "I did not say that. I said I do not know. That is why I am here, to figure it out." The three of them stood in the garage among the motorcycles and tools and oil stains. The spring sunlight came through the windows in dusty beams. Outside, they could hear the sound of children playing. The compound was growing. Families were moving in. The old ways were changing. There has to be another option. Both men turned toward her. "Like what?" "I do not know. But there has to be something other than killing him or doing nothing. Some middle ground." Damon shook his head. "You do not understand how this works, Sky. In our world, there is no middle ground. Rusty betrayed the club. The punishment for that is death. It always has been. Maybe that is the problem." Her voice was stronger now. "Maybe that is why the FBI keeps winning. Because they know you will react with violence. They are counting on it. What if you did not? What if you did something they did not expect?" "Like what?" "What if you let him testify? What if you go to court and you defend yourselves? Legally, show the jury who you really are. Not the criminals Rusty will paint you as, but the people you are. The families, the businesses, the community." Demon laughed. It was a bitter sound. "We will lose. Rusty has evidence. He has recordings. He has documentation of every illegal thing the club has done for the last 6 years. The jury will convict us in under an hour. Maybe. Or maybe they will see what I saw. A group of people who take care of their own, who protect the weak, who built something real." Magnus was quiet. He walked over to one of the workbenches and sat down on a stool. He rubbed his face with both hands. "It is not a bad idea, but it is a long shot. And if it does not work, we all go to prison. If we kill Rusty, we all go to prison anyway. The FBI will know it was you. They will come down on the club with everything they have. But if you go to trial and fight this publicly, you might actually have a chance." Magnus faced Demon. "What do you think?" Demon set down the transmission part he was holding. He wiped his hands on a rag. He walked over to the garage door and stood studying the compound, at the cabins, at the children playing, at the life they had all built here. I think Sky is right. I think the old way is going to get us all killed. Maybe it is time to try something new. Magnus stood up. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Sky could not hear what he was saying, but she could see his body language shift. He was making a decision. When he hung up, he addressed them. I am calling an emergency meeting. Every president from every charter west of the Rockies. We are going to put this to a vote. If we are going to do this, we do it as a united front. The meeting took place 3 days later. 230 Hells Angels converged on the compound. Presidents, vice presidents, sergeants at arms, road captains. The lodge was packed. Sky was not allowed in the room where the vote happened, but she stood outside with Riley and 24 other women and children waiting. It took 6 hours. When the doors finally opened, Magnus emerged. His face was unreadable. He walked directly to Sky. It passed. 73% voted yes. We are going to trial. We are going to fight this legally. He paused. And you are going to help us. Me. How? You are going to be our character witness. You are going to tell the jury your story, how we helped you, how we protected your sister, how we are not the monsters Rusty will claim we are. Sky felt her heart start to race. I do not know if I can do that. You can. Demon materialized behind her. You are the bravest person I know, Sky Brennan. If anyone can tell that jury the truth, it is you. The trial began on April 6, federal courthouse in Portland. The prosecution had a mountain of evidence, recordings of conversations about drug deals, photos of weapons caches, testimony from dozens of informants and undercover agents. And at the center of it all, Rusty Malone. He took the stand on day 3. He looked different, thinner, cleaner. He wore a suit and glasses. He looked like a suburban dad, not a biker. He spoke clearly and confidently. He detailed every crime the club had committed, every murder, every robbery, every deal. The jury listened with rapt attention. On cross-examination, the defense attorney, a sharp woman named Catherine Harper, went for blood. She hammered Rusty on his own crimes. She pointed out that he had participated in everything he was now testifying about. She got him to admit he had killed his own brother to fake his death. But it was not enough. The jury still believed him. You could see it in their faces. On day 7, Sky took the stand. She was terrified. Her hands shook so badly she had to sit on them. The courtroom was packed. 200 Hells Angels filled the gallery. The jury observed her with curiosity. The prosecutor observed her with contempt. He thought she was going to be an easy witness to discredit. He was wrong. Catherine Harper walked Sky through her story. The night she saved Demon. The 2 weeks she spent caring for him. The medallion. The promise. 5 years of silence. Riley's illness. Vincent Romano. The attack on the compound. The surgery. Everything. Sky did not try to make the Hells Angels sound like heroes. She told the truth. She told the jury that, yes, these men had done illegal things. Yes, they had broken laws. But she also told them about the community, about the families, about the way they took care of people who had nowhere else to go. She described the night she drove into that roadblock, the chains, the blood, the choice she made. She described living in fear of Vincent Romano, the photos of Riley, the certainty that her sister would die. She described the moment 30 motorcycles appeared outside her apartment building at 3 in the morning. She described what it felt like to be saved by people who owed her nothing except a promise made 5 years earlier by a man the world thought was dead. When she finished, there was absolute silence in the courtroom. The prosecutor stood up for cross-examination. He was a young man with slicked back hair and an expensive suit. He smiled at Sky like he was about to devour her. Miss Brennan, is it not true that you are currently living at a compound owned by the Hells Angels? Yes. And is it not true that the club paid for your sister's heart transplant surgery? Yes. So you owe them. His voice was sharp. You owe them a great deal, which makes your testimony here today somewhat suspect, does it not? Sky met his gaze directly. The girl she had been at 19 and the woman she was now at 24 merged in that moment. I do owe them. I owe them my sister's life. I owe them my own life. But that does not make my testimony false. It makes it personal. The Hells Angels saved us when no one else would. Not the government, not the hospitals, not the insurance companies. These men who you are trying to send to prison, they are the ones who stepped up. The prosecutor tried to interrupt, but Sky kept talking. You want the jury to see monsters. You want them to see criminals and outlaws. And maybe they are. But they are also fathers and brothers and husbands. They are mechanics and truck drivers and cooks. They are people who take care of their own. And if that makes me biased, then yes, I am biased. I am biased toward the people who saved my life. She paused, her voice dropping to something quieter, but no less fierce. 5 years ago, I stopped my car on a dark highway. I did not know who I was saving. I did not know what it would cost me. But I stopped because I saw a human being who needed help. And when I needed help, these men remembered. They drove 2,000 miles. They risked everything because that is what family does. And if you cannot see that, then I do not know what else I can tell you. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. The prosecutor tried to regain control, but he had lost the momentum. When Sky stepped down from the witness stand, half the jury was wiping their eyes. The trial lasted 4 more weeks. The prosecution brought more witnesses, more evidence. But something had shifted. The jury had seen another side of the story. When the defense rested their case, the judge sent the jury to deliberate. They were out for 3 days. When they came back, the verdict was split. Guilty on some minor charges, not guilty on the RICO conspiracy, not guilty on most of the violent crimes. The club would have to pay fines. Some members would face probation. But there would be no mass arrests, no dismantling of the organization. It was a victory, not complete, not clean, but real. Outside the courthouse, 200 Hells Angels erupted in cheers. Sky stood on the steps with Riley observing the celebration. Demon found her in the crowd. You did it. We did it. Magnus appeared next to them. He was smiling, actually smiling. The club voted. Voted on what? Magnus reached into his vest and pulled out a patch. Not the honorary member patch. This one was different. It was a full rocker, red and white, Hells Angels, Portland, and below it a center patch with a winged skull. But instead of the usual design, this skull had flowers woven through it. We have never had a female member, not in 70 years of club history, but the vote was unanimous. You are not just honorary anymore, Sky. You are a full member, a sister, if you want to be. Sky took the patch. She examined it. She observed Damon. She observed Riley, who was crying and laughing at the same time. I want to be. That night, there was a ceremony at the compound. 230 members gathered in the main lodge. Sky was brought before the assembly. Magnus spoke first. He told the story of the girl who drove into an execution. Then Damon spoke. He told the story of 2 weeks on a couch and a promise made. Then 20 other voices spoke. People Sky had worked with, fixed bikes for, cooked with, lived alongside. When it was done, Magnus held up the vest. It was leather, custom made, on the back the full patch. Hells Angels, Portland, the winged skull with flowers. On the front, her name, Sky. And below it, a new nickname they had given her, Guardian. Magnus helped her put it on. It fit perfectly. The room erupted in applause and cheers. Motorcycle engines roared outside. 230 voices chanting her name. Sky stood there in her leather vest, surrounded by her new family, and she understood for the first time that she was home. 3 months after the trial, Riley graduated from community college with her associate degree in nursing. She applied to a 4-year program and got in with a full scholarship. Sky was in the audience when Riley walked across the stage. So were Magnus and Damon and 30 other members of the club. They cheered louder than anyone else. That summer, Sky opened her own motorcycle repair shop in Portland. The club helped her with the startup costs. She named it Guardian Garage. The logo was a winged skull with flowers. Business was good, not just from the club, but from civilians too. Word spread. There was a woman mechanic who did honest work at fair prices. People came. Riley moved out of the compound to live closer to her nursing school. Sky stayed. She had a cabin now, a real one, 2 bedrooms, a porch, a view of the trees. Demon lived 3 cabins down. They had dinner together twice a week. They were not romantic. They were something deeper than that. They were two people who had saved each other and knew it. On the anniversary of the night Sky had driven into the roadblock, Magnus held a ceremony. He presented Sky with a new medallion, silver, engraved. One side showed the Reaper. The other side showed the same image, but this time the Reaper was reaching down to help someone up. One life, one debt paid. Sky held the medallion in her palm. It was heavy and real. She surveyed the assembled club, at the men and women who had become her family. Damon stepped forward. He reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 broken pieces of silver. The original medallion. The one Sky had smashed on her kitchen counter a year ago. I kept these. I thought about throwing them away, but then I realized they were important. They were proof that promises matter, that loyalty means something. He handed the pieces to Sky. You broke the medallion because you needed help, because you were desperate and alone and you did not know what else to do. But what you did not realize was that you had already saved us. You saved me 5 years ago. And by doing that, you saved all of us. You reminded us what we are supposed to be. Sky took the broken pieces. She held them next to the new medallion. Broken and whole, past and present. What do I do with these? Whatever you want. They are yours. That night, Sky sat on her porch studying the 3 pieces of silver, the 2 broken halves of the old medallion, the new one whole and perfect. The 19-year-old girl who had stopped her car on a dark highway came to mind. What that girl would think if she could see where that single decision had led. She thought that girl would be proud. Sky took the broken pieces and the new medallion inside. She found a small wooden box, her mother's box, the one she had kept the first medallion in for 5 years. She placed all 3 pieces inside. Then she put the box back under her bed. She did not need to look at them to remember. She did not need physical objects to know who she was and where she came from. But she kept them anyway. Because they were proof. Proof that courage matters, that kindness matters, that one person stopping their car can change everything. 5 years after that, Riley graduated from nursing school. She took a job at a hospital in Portland, working in the cardiac ward. She specialized in transplant patients. She was good at her job, patient, kind. She understood what it felt like to be afraid. She had been there. Guardian Garage expanded. Sky hired 3 more mechanics. The business was successful enough that she could afford to do pro bono work. She fixed bikes for veterans who could not afford repairs. She taught free classes on basic motorcycle maintenance to anyone who wanted to learn. The Hells Angels Portland charter became something different under Magnus's leadership. Not soft, never soft, but more careful, more deliberate. They still protected their own. They still handled threats. But they did it with more precision, more thought. They became a force that people respected, not just feared. Damon never went back to being vice president. He opened his own ranch in Montana. He raised horses. He still wore his patch, still rode with the club when they needed him. But mostly he lived quietly. He had earned it. On the 10th anniversary of the night Sky saved Demon's life, the club held a gathering at the compound. 230 members, plus families, plus friends, over 500 people total. It was the biggest gathering in the club's history. Magnus, who was now 70 and considering retirement, stood on the porch of the main lodge and told the story one more time. The story of a 19-year-old girl who drove into a roadblock and saved a dying man. The story of a promise made and a promise kept. The story of how one act of courage changed everything. Sky stood in the crowd listening. Riley was next to her. Demon was next to Riley. Around them were faces Sky had come to know over the years. Some were old, some were new, some were blood family. Most were not, but they were all family nonetheless. When Magnus finished the story, the crowd was silent. Then someone started an engine. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, all 500 motorcycles in the compound roared to life. The sound was deafening. The ground shook. The trees trembled. It was not a celebration. It was a declaration, a reminder, a promise. We are still here. We will always be here for each other. for the Wostemon, for the desperate, for anyone brave enough to stop their car and ask for help. Sky climbed onto her motorcycle. She kicked the engine over. She glanced at Riley, who was riding on the back. She glanced at Damon, who was on his own bike next to them. She glanced at Magnus, standing on the porch, watching them all with pride and exhaustion and love. Then she twisted the throttle and rode. The convoy of motorcycles rolled out of the compound. 500 engines, 500 hearts, one family. They rode through the mountains of Oregon as the sun set behind them. The sky turned orange and pink and purple. The air smelled like pine and freedom. Sky felt the wind on her face. She felt Riley's arms around her waist. She felt the weight of her patch on her back. The broken medallion under her bed came to mind. The new one Magnus had given her. Promises kept and debts paid and lives saved. And she rode. Because that was what you did when you were part of something bigger than yourself. You showed up. You protected your own. You kept your promises. You stopped your car on dark highways and you pulled strangers out of hell. You became family. And family never forgets. The line between witness and warrior had never really existed. Sky had learned that. You did not choose to be brave. You just were. You saw something that needed doing and you did it. You saw someone who needed help and you helped them. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, that single moment of choice became a lifetime of belonging. Years would pass. Riley would become a leading cardiac surgeon. Guardian Garage would become a chain with locations in 3 states. Magnus would retire, and Damon would reluctantly accept the role of national president. The club would continue to evolve, walking the razor edge between their outlaw roots and the legitimate future they were building. But it all traced back to one moment, one choice, one girl who stopped her car when everyone else would have driven past. On quiet nights, Sky would sometimes drive out to Highway 101. She would park on the shoulder near where the old roadblock had been. The road was empty now, dark and peaceful. The Douglas firs still swallowed the moonlight. She would sit there for a while, engine bling, and remember. The terror, the adrenaline, the absolute certainty that what she was about to do was insane, and then doing it anyway. That was the moment that changed everything. Not the trial, not the patch, not the business or the family or the legacy, the moment she chose to stop. That was when Sky Brennan became who she was always meant to be. Not a delivery girl counting pennies and running on fumes, not a victim or a survivor, but something else entirely, a guardian. Someone who stopped when others drove past. Someone who saved strangers and kept promises and built a family from the broken pieces of a medallion smashed on a kitchen counter in the desperate dark of a Thursday night. The 19-year-old girl was still in there somewhere, tired and scared and $347 short, but she was no longer alone. She had never been alone, not really. Not from the moment she pressed her palm against the horn and drove into the light. Sky started her engine. She pulled back onto Highway 101 and headed home. Behind her, the road stretched dark and empty, but she was not afraid of the dark anymore. She had learned that sometimes the most dangerous-looking men in leather and chrome were the ones who would move heaven and earth to keep their promises. She had learned that family was not about blood, but about who showed up when the world fell apart. She had learned that one act of courage could echo forward through decades, changing lives and building legacies. Most importantly, she had learned that she was enough, just as she was. No money, no connections, no special skills, just a girl who stopped her car because it was the right thing to do. And that had been enough to change everything. The compound lights appeared through the trees ahead. Home. Sky pulled into the familiar drive. Motorcycles lined the road. Laughter drifted from the lodge. Someone was cooking. Someone was playing guitar. Riley's car was parked by her old cabin, visiting for the weekend. Damon stepped out onto his porch, coffee mug in hand. He raised it in silent salute. Sky returned the gesture. She parked her bike. She walked up the steps to her cabin. She opened the door. Inside, on her shelf, next to photographs and certificates and memories, was a small wooden box. 3 pieces of silver rested inside, one broken into 2 halves, one forged whole and new, past, present, and future, all connected by a single moment on a dark highway when a young woman decided that some things mattered more than fear. Sky closed the door. Tomorrow there would be work, bikes to fix, people to help, a family to protect. But tonight there was peace. She had stopped her car and saved a life. And in doing so, she had saved her own. Not just from Vincent Romano or eviction or desperation, but from the slow death of giving up, of accepting that the world was cruel and nothing ever changed, and people like her did not matter. She mattered. She had always mattered, and now she knew it. Outside, 500 motorcycles slept in neat rows. 500 families rested under the same sky. And somewhere on a dark highway between past and future, a 19-year-old girl made the choice that would echo through all their lives. She stopped her car. She saved a stranger. She kept a promise. And the world was never the same.